Welcome, everyone, to the City of Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for August 5th, 2021. The agenda documents and minutes are located at okc.primegov.com/public/portal. For anyone wishing to speak on an item today, hopefully you've filled out or previously notified staff that you intend to speak on this item. And if you are in opposition to an item, hopefully you filled out one of the white forms outside and notified city staff of your opposition to an application. We will call each case, and then I will recognize the applicant or the applicant's representative to speak, and then we will recognize any supporters, then any protests, and then we will close with the applicant speaking. Public comment will then be closed unless specifically reopened by me or another board member. The board will deliberate and then vote. For speakers other than the applicant, please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. If several people have signed up to speak for an item, we ask that you combine your comments into one speaker to the extent possible. If you arrived after your item has been heard, or if you have a different matter to raise with the board, you'll be allowed to speak under the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda. Board members will be allowed to ask questions and make comments at any time during the meeting. Please do not interrupt board members while they are speaking so that we can have a clear record and it makes the meetings go by much faster. Before you begin with your comments, please identify yourself by stating your name and address, and this meeting is called to order. First item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the July 1st, 2021 meeting. Do we have any changes or a motion?
Hello.
Testing. I move approval of the meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to receive the minutes, approve the minutes from the July 1st, 2021 meeting. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is continuance requests or withdrawals. I believe we have a couple.
We have two today, both request deferral to September 2nd meeting. It's item 26, case 14907, and item 28, case 14782.
Is anyone here hoping to be heard on any of those items? Seeing none, I think we can take a motion to continue those as requested.
I move we continue both of them.
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to continue those two items as requested. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And those items are continued. Now move to the consent docket, and nothing on the consent docket. We'll move to items requiring a separate vote.
First item for public hearing is case 14861. It's a request of Two Structures Homes for a variance to the setback regulations located at 15640 Langley Way.
Is the applicant present? Okay. If you want to come introduce yourself and just give us a summary of your application. The center one. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm super new.
Oh, no, we see it a lot. No problem.
Okay. So we had it surveyed and they missed the mark, the foundation company, by 2 feet. And it wasn't caught until the mortgage company had gone out to do their portion of the documents. So that was when we found out the house had already been framed at that point.
Board members, any questions or comments on this one? We'll go a little bit quicker. Feel free to slow me down if need. But we've got a large agenda. But I don't have any questions. This one sort of makes sense. We don't like doing these, and I'm going to work with city staff. I've decided after seeing this large agenda on ways we can maybe prevent that in the future, but I can get on board with this one.
Maybe a survey before they
We've
finish the foundation.
I think a requirement, yep.
It is, and we actually had to change some of our surveyor was telling us they were getting out there and marking from the center around, and I guess that wasn't the case on this house, which is why I guess the foundation company missed their mark.
Okay. Any questions or comments, board members? Okay. Anyone else wanted to speak on this application? think Mr. Voorhees is taking a quick break to deal with some issues. I think we're ready for a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we approve case number 14861 based on the fact that it meets the regulations for a variance.
And I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14861 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, item 2 is case 14890, request of City of Oklahoma City on behalf of First Americans Museum for a variance to the sign regulations located at 859 First Americans Boulevard.
Good afternoon. My name is Wiley Williams. I'm the Deputy City Attorney for the city. I'm here at the request of management in support of, and we filed it on behalf of, at the request of the Native American Cultural Agency of the state of Oklahoma for a variance to a sign for the new First Americans Museum. For a little bit of history, if it's important or not, but the state had a study back in the 1980s that recommended the state explore the creation of a museum to highlight the state's rich history with the American Indian. That took fruition in 1994 when the state legislature created the Native American Cultural and Education Authority, which is a state agency. And then things moved slowly from 1940 until the into the late 90s and early 2000s when they started really putting money into construction of the museum. And the dreams or vision of some people expanded that from just a kind of a plain type museum to a world-class museum. So the legislature struggled with funding it, and in 2015, they pretty much threw up their hands and passed House Bill 2237. This legislation provided that the state would put in $25 million more to the construction of the museum if the city of Oklahoma City would put in $9 million, and the American Indian Cultural Museum Foundation would put in $31 million. And there were some other terms and conditions in that legislation that required the city to operate the museum after it was constructed. And in that regard, the city entered into a relationship with the Chickasaw Nation and agreed that we would sell them the other property surrounding the museum in exchange for their cooperation in helping us get it underway. So I've been working with this issue since 2015, and we're here to support the application for the sign. The sign is kind of a late issue that just arose. Probably should have been planned for better with the state, but they didn't. So the foundation has raised funds from donors for the sign, and we would appreciate the Board of Adjustment's consideration for a variance on the size of this sign, understanding that what is being built out there is a world-class museum, and it deserves a world-class signage that can be seen from some period away. I will introduce Michael O'Neill, who is the attorney for the foundation that the city has a contract with to operate the museum, to explain why we believe it's needed. Michael?
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Michael O'Neill, 522 Colcord Drive, Oklahoma City. So this, what's on your screens at the moment is a depiction of the museum location relative to where the sign can go. And that road that goes from Eastern Avenue, which is north and south, there is not a dedicated public road. Now, there's a public easement along there, but it's not a dedicated public road. So the closest public road is Eastern Avenue. And we need a sign located to help guide people into the site. So you can see that's a fair distance away. If you'd move on to the next slide. There's an overhead shot showing just how far away that sign is from the museum. This is a depiction of one face of the proposed three-sided sign. It's 35 feet tall. The existing sign, the top of that sign is at 21 feet. That sign would be removed, and the north post would be replaced, would be covered with this sign. The other post would be cut down. So that's a close to scale depiction of how it would look. This is a view from the exit ramp at I-40 and Eastern Avenue, showing just in the very right-hand side of the screen, you can see that splotch of blue. That's the existing sign, and you can see how small it is from that location. And this is just a quick video of the approach at double speed. Nobody was driving that fast. So you can see, having made the turn onto Eastern Avenue, it's still not that apparent that that's going to be the turn-in location for the museum. So this new design sign, which we think is quite a bit more aesthetically attractive than what's there, is going to help gather attention for the entry. So, and we can show all the other approaches, or if there are questions, I can answer them now, and I'm glad to.
Yeah, I'm personally familiar with the area, very familiar with the area. So I don't know if board members would like to see other approaches, but I think I'm okay. I think I understand. Board members? Okay, sounds like they're okay.
Okay. And a couple of key considerations here are, one, we anticipate this is going to be a relatively short-term solution. Ultimately, the Chickasaw Nation, when it develops the rest of the property, will probably move the entry road, and at that point, there'll have to be a new application for a sign. So this is not the permanent situation, and our guess is it's maybe 2 to 3 years out when the sign gets taken down and moved. And then, the key feature of this site that really necessitates something prominent at that entry is, even though the museum itself is a large landmark, it's so far back from Eastern Avenue that it's not readily apparent that that's where you go in. And we need people slowing down to make that turn in the midst of significant semi-traffic. We don't want people slowing down at the last minute to make that turn.
Do you have any other comments? Or
Is it going to be a solid sign, or is it just framed out in canvas, or what kind of sign is it?
It's, I think the surface underneath is metal, but it's a vinyl.
Okay,
It's vinyl on top of metal, is my understanding.
so definitely temporary.
And it's internally lit. The lower element is not lit, but from the word museum up, it's lit internally.
Right.
As you can see, the existing sign has just floodlights shining on it. In the absence of a variance for something close to the requested height, the alternative is to leave the existing sign in place, but nobody likes the way it looks. So
Yeah, I don't either.
we'd like something, an improvement to mark what is the key feature of this American Indian Cultural Center district.
okay. I'll kind of give my comments. I think it's less offensive than what you could otherwise have there, as you kind of pointed out. To me, it also looks like you're sort of rolling up what could otherwise be allowed and putting it vertically instead of just what you could have there now. So to me, I think it's less offensive, and it's not that much in excess than what you would be allowed by the code. I would want to limit it only to as rendered, so that if someone develops this later, they don't get to enjoy kind of a broad variance to something that the board maybe didn't contemplate. So, but I think that's inherent in the approval of the application, that it'll be as rendered in the application. So I don't think we need any special conditions on that. The other thing, just kind of personally, I'm glad to see this project coming to fruition. This has been an eyesore to me and sort of an embarrassment for the city, and not for the city's fault, but just overall, all parties involved, it's been very frustrating. And so it's nice to see this being completed. And I can support the application. Board members, any questions or comments? Is there anyone signed up? I don't have anyone signed up, but does anyone else want to speak on this application? Okay. Board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14890 for the reason it meets the conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 3, case 14884, request of Randall Rowland for a variance to the minimum lot width requirements in the R1 district located at 1201 Davis Avenue.
It's the, oh, yep.
It's part of the lot, I guess, maybe that's why. Bottom line is.
Sorry, sir, I get instructed
Oh, I'm
around,
sorry.
around once a meeting to make sure people introduce themselves
Oh,
by name and address for the purposes of the record. So,
My name's Randall S. Rowland, and I'm purchasing this lot. And I'm here representing myself and the Allens.
okay.
Okay, the Allens sold off, which you can see where my name is. Allens sold that property off just to the east of me. And I don't know if the title company's got liability or what, but they just left a 30-foot access road into the property known as 1201 North Davis. There's a house located on it. There's people living in it. The new purchaser for that property fenced it in and left the 30-foot out there as what was agreed. And then when I started checking into purchasing, they're telling me that we have to have a 50-foot access. So basically what I'm asking for is to move it from a 50-foot to a 30-foot. Pretty simple.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. I didn't have anyone sign up to speak on this. Is there anyone that is hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval of case number 14884 for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14884 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you do the lot splits, I'll see you soon. That's the next step. Appreciate you guys.
Item 4 is case 14891. It's a request of Stonetown North Moore Santa Fe LLC for a variance to the mobile home park regulations at 600 Southeast 83rd Street.
Yeah, good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Mark Zitzow is also here with us. What we seek is a variance to the requirement under the code that a manufactured home park have a service building. In years past, these parks were more transient in nature in terms of the built environment, and there was a need for a common area where bathrooms and showers and laundry services were located because many of the structures within the parks didn't have those features. Well, modern manufactured homes, of course, have all of those features located within the four walls of the home, and so the need for a service quarters is just simply not there anymore. The code is fairly dated in this regard, and the code just has not caught up with where the current manufactured home market is. So the requirement to build one of this would just frankly be a waste, unnecessary funds to be spent, and it would just be a building that would sit unused, because each of the people that live in this park will of course have their own showers, bathrooms, and laundry services within the structure. What you see these types of facilities would be at like the KOA campgrounds, right? A campground area where perhaps people are actually camping, or they have a fifth wheel of some type, is where you would see that. That's not what this is. This is a manufactured home community, so it's similar to a single-family residential district in that their homes, they're just manufactured inside of a factory rather than built on property. So we would ask for your consideration, and staff has found no unfavorable considerations. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
You might, I don't know if your mic is on or.
No, it's not. It wasn't. It is now. No, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. What brought this application on? It was an existing mobile home, non-conforming, and
Yeah,
you're
so
trying to add something to it.
when we went to get some permits, the ninth floor brought this up. What I think you see is older home communities like this have, throughout the years, not maintained their facilities, but there's no new need for new permits, and so it doesn't get tripped. Our client came in and bought, and we're actually the next 3 items on the docket, but our client came in and bought it, is revamping, re-permitting, and building some new structures, and so that those new permits are what triggered the code provision.
Right.
Now, if you go look at a bunch of, frankly, most of the manufactured home communities, you'll see they don't have these. But not getting new permits, of course, there's no reason for the city to know that those facilities don't exist.
You're not going to like me, but sometimes that happens. My problem with this, and it's not insurmountable to you, but it might not just be at this board, but to me, this just didn't seem like something that's within the purview of the Board of Adjustment. It certainly can be within the purview of the Board of Adjustment, but kind of how I see the board and what we're supposed to find under these statutory standards is not to determine whether a code provision is outdated and doesn't make sense, and therefore find ways around it. It's to find peculiar cases where it's still a good rule, but this unique property isn't quite contemplated by the code, and so a variance is appropriate. Here, I think what you're saying is the code is wrong and needs to be changed, and I don't know that this board's the place to determine that. I think Planning Commission potentially could determine that, in which case you could roll this application over, or these applications, over to Planning Commission, but that's why I said I don't think you're going to like me, is because I just personally don't think that I can support this for those reasons, but I don't want your client to lose out on the application fee, and so I think those could be rolled over to Planning Commission. That said, I'm only one board member, and I've been outvoted before, so the rest of the board might be supportive of the application. But for me, I don't know that this property is peculiar. I don't know that necessarily it's been demonstrated that it would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good without a greater showing that this would not be necessary. And then importantly, I don't see how it meets the minimum necessary to alleviate an unnecessary hardship. So
Sure.
for those reasons, that's where I am, but again, I might be the only one on the board that has those sentiments.
Let's hope so. So let's talk about that briefly. Since the Planning Commission is made up of obviously one Board of Adjustment member and several former Board of Adjustment members, including the chair of Planning Commission, I can tell you, without a doubt, if we came to rezone this, and the only reason we were rezoning it was because of this one provision, the first thing out of Ms. Powers, Mr. Craven's mouth would be, why is this not in front of the Board of Adjustment? This is exactly why the Board of Adjustment exists. It's not wholly different from the parking variances that have been fairly common lately. The parking code has simply not been updated to comply with what current retail standards, and that is one of the bases for hardships in those cases that routinely have been getting approved in front of the board. So in terms of the statutory conditions, the application of the ordinance creates a hardship because it would require us to build a building that would just be a complete waste. Perhaps a way to combat your concern is we could stipulate, I assume, Mark, tell me if I'm out of turn, that each of the homes would be required to have the same facilities that would otherwise be found located within the service building. So if each of the homes has laundry hookups, bathrooms, and showers, then there is just no need for this independent service quarter, and then therefore there is no detriment to the public good. And in terms of least necessary, of course, we meet all other code provisions here, so we're not seeking multiple variances. And the peculiar piece, I don't know. I mean, frankly, every variance that comes up here, every piece of property is a bit unique. I think all factors taken together, we meet the elements necessary. This doesn't feel like a zoning case because, of course, zoning is really a legislative action talking about uses and intensity of uses, and we're not seeking to change anything about that. We're simply seeking to change one provision of the code that would require us to build a building that's wholly unnecessary. And if we require each home to have the facilities that would otherwise be located within this, I think we have met the spirit and intent of the ordinance for those services to be available to everybody within one of these facilities.
Yeah, and that's something I commented and had written down is potentially if it could be shown and or stipulated that every property would have the equivalent of these, that would help the application, but it doesn't overcome the fundamental hesitation that I've had, and I've expressed in prior applications, and even in the parking context, denied some of those requests, that I don't know that our role here is to determine that a city code is outdated and therefore needs to be changed. I think that's city council's responsibility, or get around it through rezoning. In the parking example, often those are, the applicants will come up here and say, this is a, manufacturer of whatever products. We have 5 employees. We don't need 20 parking spaces or something like that. So there is some kind of unique showing there. But I'm just a little bit hesitant here to set the precedent, which again, there's 2 other applications requesting the exact same relief. I'm hesitant to set the precedent that this is the appropriate city body where to come to if a code provision just needs to be updated and needs to be changed. So,
and I don't disagree. I mean, that is just one of the factors that we believe meets that first element of a hardship, right? I mean, the idea that the legislative body perhaps needs to update their code, which of course there's a very large code update process that's currently underway in the city, that's not the sole basis for our hardship. I mean, the basis for our hardship is these facilities are just absolutely not necessary. It will require a building to get built with plumbing and electricity and all of these things that will just sit there unused, frankly become some sort of an attractive nuisance for people. If there was like I said, we're willing to stipulate that each of the homes will have all of the facilities that would otherwise be located within one of these. I think we have met that spirit and intent of the code and shown that it's meeting all of these elements. But I understand it's one vote, and I'm hoping that it's a lone vote. So,
can we hear more about the scope of this proposed stipulation from your client?
Yeah.
And
so Mark's.
And how that would look and be enforced and all that.
So we could require, and I guess I'd defer to JJ, that each lot or each unit would be required to have bathroom, shower, and laundry hookups. That is what is found in these service quarters, under the idea that the individual units perhaps don't, and so they have to have that for the residents to be able to use. So if we require that each of the units to have all of those things that would otherwise be found, I think that we've found, or I think we have satisfied the spirit and intent of the ordinance, and I believe we could have that through development services at a permitting stage. But I defer to JJ on that.
Yeah, I think if you stipulated that and made it a condition on the board order,
What
When they go to
about
pull permits for homes, they'll see that.
on current residents as well? Would they be, is there any that don't have any of those services?
No, they all have it.
Okay.
I mean, that was my thought is, and I alluded to this earlier when I said it's evidentiary showing. I don't know that whether they do or they don't, and without that showing, I mean, I think the intent is, of this provision is to allow those folks to have a place in close proximity to do their laundry if they might not be able to afford $1,000 for a washer and a dryer, who knows? Shower facilities, I think, I would agree with you. I think most of these places have showers.
Right.
But laundry, I wasn't quite sure about.
We can require that all of them have it, even the current one. They all do have it currently, so we're happy to require it on everything now and in the future.
Board members, questions or comments?
So they're all required as part of the condition?
I think your microphone might be off.
So if it's all required, that'll be part of the condition that you're asking us to approve on the condition that all of them are,
I think he's proposed that they have
that is what he's doing?
shower facilities in the home and hookups for washer and dryer.
Okay.
I'm not sure how we could put in there or enforce that they have to have a washer and a dryer. So
Hookups for washer
I
and
understood
dryer.
why you said hookups and not actually a washer and a dryer.
Of course, you require me to have a washer and dryer in my home, right? I may prefer to, use the hose outside, but
Yeah, right.
So my question is, would that be a condition?
hookups can.
I think the board can make it a condition,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Thank you.
And he's offered that as a concession, so I think they wouldn't oppose anything like that. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I think I can support it with that condition, but frankly, Mr. Chairman, those were some of the same concerns that I had when I was looking at these, because not knowing that this statutory provision covers not just manufactured home parks, but also RV parks, which are more recreational type vehicles, like you said, like a fifth wheel that potentially wouldn't have a laundry facility or hookups in the structure itself. But if you're willing to include that condition, I think perhaps maybe that barely gets you to the peculiarity provision of the statute for me, because if others are not requiring that, this one is, that makes it a little different than just, painting everyone with the same brush and saying, okay, just because you're a mobile home park and these are no longer necessary, we're going to deem it not necessary. So with that condition, I could potentially get behind the application.
On the fifth wheel things, are those to was that west part of the same?
Fifth wheels. Are there any fifth wheels here? These are all manufactured homes.
Okay,
These are
so
all
that's a different
manufactured
part adjacent, Chill?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought I saw one of your applications, it might have just been an old photo, but it looked like it was not developed yet. Is that just an old photo, or is it vacant, or,
The next application.
okay?
I
And
don't want to
that'll,
spoil the surprise.
okay, that'll be manufactured homes similar to this or exactly like this application?
Yes, sir.
I don't have anyone signed up. Did anyone want to speak on this application? Board members, questions or comments? I know for me, I guess it's just sort of indicating to the applicant. Do you have any other comments before I continue? Okay.
No, sir.
My comments are sort of an indication to you, although I've expressed them in other applications that you've brought, of my hesitation in this area, and that I'll be watching these applications. I think you can get there with this one, with this stipulation. And I think that does meet what the code's trying to achieve. But to me, it's on very thin ice, and I'm certainly not comfortable with where this is going. So with that, I think I can support this application, but board members, I can't make a motion, so questions, comments, or motion?
I'll move approval of case number 14891 with the condition that the manufactured homes in this park have the same facilities that are required by section 31100, which would include bathroom, showers, and laundry facilities.
I'll second.
And just for
Hookups.
clarity, that's washer and dryer hookups and not
Oh.
actually the appliance. Okay. Just didn't want to see you back before us on this. So with that, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14891 for the reason that it meets the conditions for a variance on the condition that the existing homes meet the requirements of Chapter 31, Section 100, concerning the requirements to construct a service building and include washer and dryer hookups. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 5 is case 14892, request of Stonetown Highland for a variance to mobile home park regulations at 8420 South Shields Boulevard.
Once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. I'd like to reassert all the arguments I just made. We agree to the same condition. There is another variance here. And so, Mr. Chairman, you had asked, so this is, south of what we just looked at. So what we seek here is a variance to the buffering requirement. These will operate as one park. The buffer requirement exists in the code to screen different uses or incompatible uses. Because this will operate as one complex or one community, the need for the screening just simply isn't there. So frankly, it would create a fairly, I think, uncomfortable situation where we've got neighbors with this giant fence that is meant to screen. That is just unnecessary here because it will be operated as one park. If it all came in under one permit as a new park, of course, this requirement wouldn't be there. But because it's addressed different and it's different parcels, this code requirement kicks in. And so we're seeking the relief on the laundry quarters that, again, we're happy with the same stipulation, and then a variance to the screening requirement.
Thought the additional variance request made sense to me. Board members, any questions or comments?
No, it looks like there's existing screening on probably where it needs to be,
Yes, sir.
there at the north end.
Okay. Is anyone signed up, or I don't have anyone signed up. Is anyone out there hoping to speak on this application? Hearing none, I think we can take a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
It's with the same conditions as the prior.
Yeah, with the same conditions previously. All hookups, water, sewer, laundry.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance requests in case number 14892 for the reason that it meets statutory condition for variances on the same conditions as the prior application. Is that sufficient for municipal counselor? Okay. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And that one's approved.
Thank you.
Item 6, case 14893, request of Stonetown Highland for a variance to mobile home park regulations at 3200 Highland Park Drive.
Again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, on behalf of the applicant. This one, as you can see from the aerial, was a former park that my client has bought and is re-permitting with new manufactured homes. And so this one, we just seek the variance on the service quarters, which were, again, in agreement to the previous stipulations in the last two applications.
Is anyone hoping to speak on this application? Okay, board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
Mobile home business is booming.
I know, I'd like to make a motion that we approve case number 14893 on the grounds that it meets the conditions for a variance with the conditions of case number 14891 and 14892 are applied.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14893 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for a variance on the same condition as the prior two applications. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again,
Item 7, case 14894, request of Timbercraft Homes for a variance to the driveway encroaching a site triangle at 2520 Northwest 132nd Place.
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. We're not talking about manufactured homes at this point. So we are seeking a variance to allow the driveway to extend into the site triangle. We've got an issue as it relates to the placement of the driveway. We can't slide it any further to the west because there's a utility easement there. You can see the 10-foot UE on the west side. So you've got the 10-foot UE that has facilities within it. So when that happens, Public Works and utilities get nervous when you start putting anything on top of that UE. It's not a normal intersection where I think the site triangle issues would be a concern. If you look at the aerial to the northeast of us is a pond, so this driveway is not really going to create an obstruction. When we think of site triangles, what the code's really trying to get at is buildings and structures that would otherwise create some sort of visual block to traveling public that would create a traffic hazard. Here, I don't believe any such hazard would exist. This is just the only place we can really put it. All the homes on this side of the block are oriented to the north, and it's not a traditional intersection because you don't really have anything northeast because of the pond. So there's really no other place on the site that we could put this. So the ordinance, I think, if applied strictly, would require us to either not have a driveway, which would be problematic, or put it further to the west that would require utilities and public works to either be upset or altogether not grant our permit for a driveway. It's unique and peculiar based upon the way that the lot is shaped. It's an irregularly shaped lot that really limits our ability to place this driveway anywhere. We think we meet the spirit and intent of the ordinance, and we don't believe there's any detriment to the public good in that this is not typically what you are concerned about with a site triangle issue because the driveway is not going to create any visual obstruction. And then finally, it's the least necessary because we have shoved it as far as possible to the west up against that UE. So with all of those factors, we would ask for your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Box, my primary problem with this application, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm ready for it, but
Yeah. This one made sense to me. I tend to agree with you without, attacking city staff that determined that you would need a variance for this. I tend to agree that the driveway is not, the same as a wall, fence, sign, or other structure that's contemplated by this provision of the code. So I think I could support it. Board members, any questions or comments?
My only question is, I get it that the driveway is not an obstruction, but you're going to put cars on it. So is that, that's what it's for. So is that creating a potential hazard?
Well, technically the driveway is really for the car to get from the street to the enclosed garage. Right now, could somebody park a car? Sure. A car in my mind is still not the same type of obstruction that you're really trying to remedy with the site triangle. So I don't believe there to be any issue with that. Again, it's not a normal intersection. You have the one coming from the north and this goes to the west, and there's really nothing on the east. It's a curved street that creates this curved lot. So I don't think that the concerns that require the site triangle are really present based upon the unique features of the lot and the surrounding environment.
Board members, any questions or comments? Or, is anyone hoping to speak on this application? Okay, seeing none. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14894 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for the variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Item 8, case 14897, request of Jeffrey Holloway for a variance to minimum lot size requirements in the R1 district located at 715 West Eubanks.
Thank you. Randy Gross, 6301 Waterford Boulevard, Suite 320, here on behalf of the applicant, Jeffrey Holloway. This is a request for variance with relation to lot size, which actually is due to the reconfiguration of the lots several years ago, at least 25 years ago. These were long, narrow, rectangle-shaped lots that were reconfigured into squares. There's an existing house on the property. The current owner is seeking to refinance, and this is something that came up and was identified by the title company. I don't know how it was missed in at least 6 prior conveyances. Upon advice of staff, we have come to ask for the variance with relation to lot size. There'll be no change in the current size of the lot, and this is due to the lot split many years ago, and the variance is the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would request approval.
I guess maybe the prior conveyances were with cash and no title cert. I don't know how that. And then I have circled refinanced. I don't know how this was financed in the first place. But
It's a great question. Again, it looks like this was within a family since about 1925, perhaps up until the early 80s, maybe even the early 90s. And so that could have had something to do with it. But there may have been cash deals previously, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Favorable considerations from the staff. The property has existed in this current configuration for over 25 years. I think that does tip in your favor. Board members, any questions or comments?
What's the variance amount? What are we? I didn't see that on here.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
The amount of the variance?
It actually is a wash. It's kind of peculiar because the lot size will actually remain the same. Essentially what you have is originally the way the neighborhood's built, they're kind of shotgun lots like this. This has been reconfigured so that these 2 lots have now been divided into north-south like this. So the lot sizes are the same, but we were advised that this was the way to proceed with getting the variance that's needed to refinance.
I don't know if we can figure it out on the fly or,
Just looking at it, the lot size would be just slightly over half of what the minimum requirement would be.
if you want a number, I don't know if the board wants a number. I'm okay with it as is.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if we needed to specify the variance amount in the approval.
Yeah, we can approve it as requested. What Mr. Barr is getting at is oftentimes we like to put a precise number on the variance. So, the variance to the minimum lot size is going to be 20 feet or something. So we put a specific number. We don't have to do that, but a lot of times we do just to lock in that in the record going forward. But I think on this one, it's existed like this for so long. I think I'm okay with it as drafted. But to your point. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, questions, comments, or a motion, board members?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14897 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Case 14901, request of Oklahoma City Thunder for a variance to the sign regulations located at 100 West Reno Avenue.
Hi, Sue Hollenbeck, Special Project Manager for the City of Oklahoma City. I'm really here just to answer any questions that you might have. This is about the roof signage of the arena and the new naming partner, Paycom Center. So it's going to, instead of being downlit, it's going to be uplit with some ring lighting around it. So it's going to really upgrade the stadium and be a great addition to our downtown area.
I think, guess I was a bit surprised that there wasn't already a variance for what existed in the past. But
This one, I think the variance is the fact that the old logo was painted on the ceiling with lights shining on it. This one is actually a little bit smaller, but it's lit from the bottom versus shined from the top. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but, well, I see JJ almost about to comment, but did you have a comment or not? Okay. I see section 102C3 concerning approval of 3 exterior signs on the arena. So is that the number of signs that we're we're dealing with here, or?
It's just the roof. This is just for the signage on, from street level is exactly the same as it was before. This is just for the roof signage. And since the rules don't necessarily equate to a building this big, that the changes required the variance.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just trying to pin down exactly what we're approving here and why, but, okay. Board members, questions or comments? I think I understand now. Is anyone hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? And hearing none, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve case number 14901 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Okay, item 10 is case 1492-902, request for variance to aisle standards in the C3 district located at 436 Northwest 30th Street.
Robinson from Robinson and Associates. I'm Mr. Khan, who has started a project in a zone that has some commercial and some houses. And he has a situation where we have parking issues, and we needed to have a parking lot in back of the building. And the problem is that the size of the site wouldn't permit a 24-foot driveway. And so we're working with 12 feet, and we had to get a lot of landscaping around it because of other issues in that area. And he's trying to make a small business or community meeting place. And we have 10 cars planned to go in back of the building. And we're going to get rid of a bigger hazard of backing straight out into a two-lane street, so which is dangerous, and he only has a couple of parking spaces out there. So we're down to a 12-foot driveway, and we need that to be approved. And from what I could read from the people that were working on it, the staff people, it's a no-brainer that it should have, that we should be able to do that, or the whole thing stops. And that's it.
Okay. I've got one potentially, well, I think Ms. Fridley? Yeah, Friddle, that's what I thought, and I thought that was a Y on the end. So Ms. Friddle had kind of an update for us on some procedural issues that I think I'll understand, but I'll let you convey them.
Yes, I'm Katie Friddle, and I'm the principal planner for Trent County Urban Design. I staff the Historic Preservation Commission, and I'm sorry that I caught this very late. I didn't realize that this case was on today's agenda. The application for a certificate of appropriateness for this work went to the HP Commission in June, but at the time, the applicant was still working with other city staff to determine what, if anything, about the project would require a variance. So the commission did not actually provide a recommendation on a request for a variance when they approved the certificate of appropriateness. The certificate of appropriateness is consistent, as far as I can tell, with what's being requested here as part of the variance, but I just wanted to clarify that the commission did not formally make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment on the variance request specifically.
Okay, thank you. Is it a requirement under the code that we have to have a recommendation from HP, or can we move forward?
I
without?
believe that it is. I can take a few minutes and
Okay.
verify that if you want to
Okay.
take a continuance until later in the agenda.
Yeah, why don't we, I think it's in your best interest if we continue this for a few items, and we'll put you before the very last item to get this sorted out, because what it's looking like right now is we'd have to continue this proceeding until HP gives us a recommendation of approval or denial of the variance request, and then it's fully decided at HP and it's ready for us to hear it. But there's also an opportunity or potential that we might not need that, and the recommendation is just that recommendation. It's not a prerequisite to us approving your application. And so I think while we figure that out, it's in your best interest to have us not continue this yet, but we'll continue it for a few items and hear it later on today. Does that
Okay,
make
so
sense?
you're asking us to stay later?
Yeah.
Okay, we
Yeah.
can handle that.
We'll call you back. The very last application might take a little while, so we'll get you in before that one, but it'll be later on this meeting.
Okay,
Okay,
that'll be fine.
sure, thank you.
Okay, next item is number 11, case 14-904, request of David Box for a variance to parking requirements at 5224 and 28 Classen Circle.
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, on behalf of the applicant. Cindy, could you display the aerial, please? So here we seek a variance to the parking requirements. This is a building that has existed for many, many decades, right there west of Western and along that Classen Circle. It obviously abuts the off-ramp from I-44 on its north. The building has 17 parking spaces. What we seek is a commercial kitchen, and it's a commercial kitchen that's a bit of a unique concept. It's a kind of independent operators are in this facility, and it's not one that is open to the public and end consumers to come in and actually consume the products that are being prepared here. More along the lines of, say, Uber Eats and people like that, picking it up, taking it to different consumers. So the variance is for 7 spaces based upon the unique nature of the business, that being really not open to the public. There will be no space within the facility that would allow the public to sit and eat. So the public simply just will not be at the facility, so the need isn't there. Additionally, if you look, you see the hashed black line. Outside of that, you'll see an additional, I think it's 20 additional parking spaces that are there and have been used for decades with this building. So if there were a need, we don't believe there ever would be, but if there were a need, there is that additional parking. In addition, we're actually working with ODOT at the moment, have already filed an application to either lease that from ODOT, or what we'd prefer is to acquire, have that declared surplus and acquire it. So we're working through that process. Unfortunately, ODOT's processes take 9 to 18 months is what we were told. And we've got contracts on the building and need to move much quicker than that. But again, this is the same operation, it's the same parking layout with the building that has been in existence for many, many decades. And we just don't believe that there will be, based upon this unique nature of the end user here. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I would ask for your approval.
Condition on the use?
We could, I think I might know a way around that potentially. But this area, as you're well aware, small, tight, not a lot of parking. But something I usually raise in these cases, in these applications, is whether you've maximized the allowance and the reduction you can get for bike racks and landscaping. By doing that, at least by my calculation, you get 25% off, which here would be 6 spots, leaving you with the variance of 1 spot. And so basically what I'm saying is if you add bike racks, we only need to grant a variance for 1 spot. And by doing that, all of my other concerns are alleviated with the size of the area, with the conditioning it on the use, with all that kind of stuff. Just based on this being the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship, I think you get there by adding a bike rack.
JJ, explain to me how the bike rack provision works. like in one of the parking spaces, we just literally put a bike rack and then
Trade
code tells
spaces.
us, or
You could have them on the private sidewalk or anywhere outside of the parking lot. You wouldn't want the bike racks in the parking lot taking up space.
Or there's landscaping or also motorcycle parking that you could do to get some extra space there. Usually we just say, and we've done it with your applications in the past, you maximize any reductions that are allowable in the code, and that's the condition. I think here, I already know what that is, and if you maximize 25%, it's 6 spaces. And so we'd grant a variance today of 1 space, and that maximizes it however you guys want to maximize it.
so one bike rack on the sidewalk, and we get to that.
All
I
but
will-
one, right?
I won't say the location or anything, but all I will say is that's what I'm contemplating.
Sure, so
It's-
because the site's tight, I just want to make sure my client is not here, they're an out-of-town entity, so I want to make sure that when I say we have to put a bike rack and they throw the phone at the wall.
Or
what that
landscaping
means.
or motorcycle parking or something. I mean, there's several options that have to be a bike rack, but it would be, my support for any motion would be a variance of 1 parking space, and that presupposes that you've got the reduction of 25%.
I just, as long as I understand what the bike rack requirement is, I don't want to get to code
I understand.
permitting, they say, well, yeah, you have to have X number of bike racks, and we don't have any space, and then we have to use the parking space we actually have to satisfy it. Do you,
I don't know what the formula is right now. You probably want to take a look at that and see that if you have room for motorcycle, bikes, and additional landscaping.
Scooters.
huh? Well, so, I mean, I prefer to move forward. We're happy to work with staff and maximize as best as possible. They've got a contract on the building that has terms that expire very quickly, within a matter of, I think, 10 days. I'm happy to commit that we will work with staff to install bike racks if possible.
Our landscaping.
But I can't afford a continuance here, and I don't think they're needed anyways, but I absolutely understand your point.
Yeah, well, and the board might be satisfied with all 7, 7 spaces that are being requested. To give you some flexibility, I think I could get on board with like 2, and that gives you an extra space in addition to what I've already think that you need.
2 what?
Parking spaces, so a variance of 2 spaces
So
instead
if
of
you
7.
had to, you could put the bike rack in one of them, I guess.
Right.
Well, I mean, so, yeah, we're seeking 7 spaces, but there's also 20 spaces that have historically been a part of this building and used. So really, the 7 spaces are mitigated by the 20 spaces that are there that we're also actually currently working with ODOT to acquire.
Yeah. Board members, you have a position on this application? Any comments?
My only comment is, I mean, the minimum necessary, if that's what you can, if you can do something additional to reduce the number of spaces in your application, I think that's how you meet the minimum necessary. I don't know what that is. I don't know what those formulas are.
Yeah. The only hesitation I have is because this is it's already built out and maximized in terms of building and parking. I don't want to get into some weird issue at permitting where, well, yeah, the bike rack's great, but you also have to have X number of feet worth of pathway so that the biker can get here, and you have parking spaces, thereby blocking the ability, so we can't give you that.
Yeah, I understand, and it's a difficult situation. I don't know if maybe making a couple of phone calls today could advance the ball at all. I guess all I'm saying is I would like clarity on that. Personally, I would like clarity on that point before I say you've exhausted all options. The only option is 7 spaces. You know, if
Can we get somebody from permitting to, I can push this to right before my last item.
Okay.
If I can get, my client's gonna say, well, bike rack's fine, what does that entail?
yeah,
And unless I get that from permitting, I can't agree to it. Is there anybody from Development Services over here, or can we get that question?
we'll look into it, and then we can kick this, since you're going to be here anyway, to just before your appeal. Okay. So we'll move this to the last item before the appeal, and then work on getting someone from Development Services here.
12, case 14905, request of Rose Rock Homes for variance to the accessory building regulations in the R1 district at 2025 Northwest 199th.
Pioli, Rose Rock Homes, 8312 West Reno Avenue, Suite B as in boy. Normally, when I obtain a building permit, I go into plan review and they help me with any questions I might have. With COVID restrictions, we were sending everything in online. The unique thing about this particular property is that the homeowner wanted me to put a shed behind the house. This property has two behind the houses technically, but the variance is requesting that we leave it in the current location because it's already concrete framed. I didn't even find out it wasn't approved on the building permit until after I got my frame inspection. So I'm requesting that we please allow it to stay where it currently is. It's unobstructed from any way around the house and the neighborhood. It's where the developer preferred to have it to begin with, so that's my request.
Not an application we like to see. Board members, questions or comments?
Is that the building? I'm trying to orient myself. Is it visible from the street?
No.
No? Okay.
No, we sort of wrapped the house, put the garage on a 45, and so we wrapped it around, so you cannot see it at all from Penn. You can only see it really from behind the house. You can't see it from the street. That's why the developer preferred it there. And we thought that was the rear wall of the home. As you can see, that's a little confusing. I read it as it's got two rear walls to the house, and they say the only rear wall is the other rear wall.
Is that property to the east of it? Does it have a house on it yet, or is it going to? Or?
It's a blank, it's an empty lot right now. Okay. But it will be a home, yes. Okay. But there will be a fence as well that will block it between the properties.
How tall is this structure?
10-foot walls.
10 foot?
Mm-hmm. Same veneer as the home, same roofing as the home.
So with the roofing, it'll be.
Pardon?
It'll be in excess of 10 feet with the roofing, I'm assuming?
With the roofing, it's with the pitch, yes.
Yeah. I think the school over there helps you a little bit.
Yes, there's an 8-foot wall back, or 8-foot fence behind the property, or, yeah, 10-foot fence behind the property. So you can't see it from the property very well. No more than you see the house.
Questions or comments, board members? Is anyone hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Questions, comments, or a motion?
In my view, it is behind the house.
It's tough.
Yeah.
This is not an easy one for me.
Like behind the side.
The peculiar lot shape, the fact that there's an argument that it's behind the house, the school being there helps it a little bit. It's a tough case. I wish there were a way to prevent this from coming before us. In any event, we need a motion at some point.
And it's already permanently built, right?
Yes, ma'am. Concrete foundation poured.
So I would like to make a motion.
Without the foundation, they wouldn't need a permit, right?
That's what's getting it.
And I have provided them with an engineered letter from for the footing and everything.
I mean, I think the obvious thing we don't want is for people to just build it anyway and then come here and get a variance. So the fact that it's already there doesn't mean a whole lot to me. We've denied applications in the past, even after they've been constructed. But this one's enough on the fence. I think I can probably support it. As Scott Craven says, tie goes to the runner. So, any comments or a motion?
I'd like to motion that we approve case number 14905 based on the fact that it meets the conditions for a variance.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14905 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 13, case 14906, request of Cherie Cordray for a variance to the platted building line located at 3925 Wyatt Ridge Court.
Hello, my name is Cherie Cordray of 3925 Wyatt Ridge Court, and we are seeking a variance to the build line for the property.
Okay.
The house was built and the floor plan was actually altered. Because of the property, there is an easement that runs about mid-center north to south, and so we did have to make some adjustments in the actual property itself prior to building. And it looks like when we went to close, it was determined that the mortgage inspection that was completed on January 14th noted that it was over the build line by 11.7 feet. There is a 40-foot build line set. And doing some background research, it looks like that initial build line was measured from the center of the road and not from the property easement or right of way. So we are seeking a variance for that 11.7 feet. The house is completely finished. All inspections through the City of Oklahoma City have passed, and we've also been able to obtain the certificate of occupancy, but the closing on the house is pending on an approval to this variance.
Board members, any questions or comments on this one?
So where is the property line if it's not in the center of the road? Is that a private drive or it's not, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. We lost JJ to work on the other stuff.
The house is set on a cul-de-sac. The house is the very first and then the cul-de-sac. And so I think it is just that far corner. There is a slight turn back of that property line. So I believe it is just that front corner that may be in variance. Oh, okay, there we go, yeah.
Is there an open lot there adjacent to you to the west?
There is an open lot, but the lot is for sale.
Okay.
And we own that lot and then also lot 5 as well.
Okay.
Cindy, can you go back to that one you just, the prior image? Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. So it's just that top portion? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's actually just a portion of the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that explains it a lot better.
Okay. Was anyone hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14906 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Item 14, case 14908, request for a variance to the aisle standards in the C3 district at 20 Southwest 59th Street.
Good afternoon. Daniel Vega with 20 Southwest 59th Street. So basically, we're trying to do a remodel of the building. Per code, there needs to be about 38 parking spaces in the location. The front of the building is not big enough to accommodate that. So we will have to put parking spaces in the back. The side of the building there is only 19 feet wide for the driveway. I understand it's about 23 feet that are required. So we're asking that we're allowed to put parking spaces in the back and use this side of the building as a driveway.
What's the proposed use?
We are going to divide it into 3 spaces. Currently, there's a tire shop.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, currently,
Tire
and then-
shop now.
Yeah, and then there will be a office space for construction business, and then there'll be a retail store. We're not sure what kind of retail store you see yet, if there is one.
Okay. Yeah, one of the favorable considerations is 2 cars should be able to pass 19 feet. I tend to agree with that. The variance seems pretty minimal. I'd just like to get an idea of the proposed use, just to have an idea of how much traffic is going to be trying to go back and forth, but.
So if you can see in the plans, the back of the building is all warehouse. Per regulation, there has to be about 1 parking space per 500 square feet of warehouse. So there's 11 parking spaces for warehouse. Nobody really works in the warehouse, it's just storage space. So we intend to use the back parking spaces for the employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just so I'm clear and you don't have to come back, you're not seeking a variance to the number of parking spaces or anything, right?
No.
Just the aisle? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Board members, questions or comments?
Nope. Anxious to see it redeveloped.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Anyone hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I think we can take a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay. And a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case number 14908 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved. Thank you.
Item 15, case 14-879, special exception of James Condrey to allow home sharing at 2908 Somerset Place.
Okay. Just want to start by introducing yourself by name and address. And I know you have several applications, but we'll have to take each one separately.
Sure.
So.
My name is Clay Condrey. I've recently bought some real estate that I've been renovating to serve an Airbnb purpose.
In the first application, so this is 2908 Somerset, can you give us an overview of that? It looks like 3-bed, 1-bath, and then you're going to require parking in the driveway, it sounds like?
Yeah, and so this is the first of 4 houses that I'm going to own on Somerset. Well, I think we have an application for 3 today. This is 3-bedroom. It's going to be 2-bathroom. I'm renovating it currently. It will have no garage, but it'll have parking. It'll be, 1 space covered, and then there's street parking as well. But you could fit 2 cars under the carport, and then 2 cars behind. So you could fit 4 cars in that driveway.
Well, first of all, I noticed that this was on our prior agenda and it got continued. Were there any protests or anything, or?
No,
Okay.
I was a little bit unorganized and didn't have a really great communication with the city as to whether or not I needed to be here, and
Okay.
a lot of stuff going on, so
Okay.
I just
Yeah,
missed the meeting.
We generally do one kind of continuance just as a courtesy, so instead of just denying the application.
I appreciate that.
I will say, I don't know how closely you've followed the home sharing kind of discussion at City Hall, but just as kind of an overview, there was a lot of opposition to even allowing home sharing in Oklahoma City at City Council. Again, most people didn't want it, not I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people didn't want it at all. There was a lot of opposition. The City Council contemplated having the owner be on site if you're going to use home sharing, things like that. Ultimately, they adopted this process where you come to the Board of Adjustment and we hear it and determine whether you get a special exception. With that, kind of my comments that the board's familiar with, but you might not be, are my understanding of what City Council wanted in approving home sharing is that they were going to allow it, but they wanted it to be rare and not very widespread across the city. It's inevitable that you're going to have some of it, and I think the city, every city needs some of it, particularly Oklahoma City, if we want to have any tourists or, you know, anyone for whatever reason wanting to stay in an Airbnb or something. But that said, one of the major considerations of City Council was to prevent, and I think one of the tasks that they gave to this board was to prevent kind of the de-neighborization, for lack of a better word, of neighborhoods in Oklahoma City. And so to take away from that neighborhood aspect, because all the properties on that block or that street were going to be Airbnbs or something. The city really wanted to prevent that from happening. And so for me personally, and the board can outvote me, but for me personally, that's what I watch for. We get reports now of where Airbnbs are at any home sharing permit, where they are, so we can keep track of where they appear throughout the city, so we make sure there's not too much of a concentration of home sharing in a particular area, with the goal being to prevent kind of the elimination of that neighborhood feel across the city. So that said, that's my biggest concern with not all of your applications, but with particularly the ones on Somerset. I would want to maybe grant one or two of those, but not all of those. The rest of the board might feel differently, but that's kind of where I am. And I don't know if you had any comments on that, but.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
The notice that we give to the neighbors, wouldn't that allow the neighbors to object? Isn't that the purpose of that?
I agree, and the fact that you don't have any objections is definitely works in your favor, but it doesn't eliminate what I think our task is that the city council gave us to make sure that streets aren't just becoming an entire block of Airbnbs, essentially kind of a hotel district with short-term rentals in that area and just totally destroying the concept of a neighborhood.
Have we seen that anywhere in Oklahoma City? Have we seen that fear realized?
We've denied a couple of applications already on that basis, and frankly, the people that got in early are probably going to benefit because they get their home sharing permit and special exception early, and then every application that comes after that in that area is a decreasing prospect of being approved by us for the reasons I've already articulated.
So how many are on this area?
I mean, you've got 3 today and another one coming, you've said, right?
Possibly.
Right, and so that, to me, I mean, there's certainly nothing against having long-term renters in these properties, and that's not inconsistent with what I think the city tasked with us, and that doesn't come before us. But shorter than 30 days does come before us, and those are the things that we're looking out for with these applications. So
the city hall, basically they gave you guys guidance, or explain that to me.
yes, so there's guidance that they gave us, and then there's also in the ordinance that was passed, all of these conditions for approval that have to be met in order for us to approve a special exception. Obviously, it's inherent in the name that you're getting an exception from the normal rule. So the normal rule is these are not allowed. And then you come here and you can get a special exception from that normal rule. And in order to get that special exception, there are all these criteria. It has to be in harmony with the policies adopted by the comprehensive plan. It has to be in harmony with the proposed use and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations. So a lot of the protests that come in here say this is not consistent with the zoning district regulation. Zoning here is R1.
Brings the protest neighbors?
I'm sorry?
Or citizens?
It's
at
both.
large?
It's been both. It's been interested organizations that oppose these. It's been neighbors that oppose
That's
these.
subsequent to you guys granting them, or is that prior?
It was at the adoption stage before as city council negotiated this with all the interested parties, these objections were being lodged. And then when they come before this board, those objections are being lodged. And so we've heard objections all over the place. So that's obviously not to say we haven't been approving them, because we have been approving them. And I think I could support a couple of your applications. But for me personally, particularly on Somerset, I could get on board with 1 or 2, but not any more than that. And that would potentially go for not just you, it's nothing against you. Someone else bought a bunch of properties. After you get an Airbnb or 2 on that street, they would face the same hurdles.
Sure.
But I'm only one verbose board member, so board members, any questions or comments on this application, or I guess collectively the applications, since he has several before us?
Quick question, how many houses are on that street?
How many houses are on Somerset?
Yes, approximately.
Which block? Because Somerset's a long street.
Where your houses are located, because you do
They're
have a lot.
between May and Lakeview.
I've got it mapped out here, so.
About 34, 35?
Yeah, so Katie, Ms. Asbury, the one that's highlighted now, the subject property, the one to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the one to the right of that has an application. The one across the street and to the left, so 4 houses in on the left, also has an application. So just so you can get a visual. And then I don't know where the next one that he was
It's a house I
considering.
haven't closed on yet.
Okay.
But it's under contract.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked at it in our package that we received, and I was noticing that they were pretty close, so.
Close together, yeah.
Yeah, I will just say, when in looking at, in the totality of the applications, I had the same concern about there being so many on the same street. You know, if there were 4 applications all in different areas of town, I think I would look at them differently. But you know, again, we hear these every meeting, and it's the same sort of concern. So I won't reiterate what the chairman already said, but I had the similar concerns.
Yeah, and I think this is what they were trying to prevent. Especially, you know, developers buying up a bunch of houses and you're just making a whole block of Airbnbs, so, yeah. I'd be okay with same with everybody, a couple of them, but not all of them on Somerset especially.
Yeah, for me, it was potentially the 2 that are across the street from each other on Somerset. That kind of made sense to me, is approving those, because I don't want to torture your business plan. I want you to make some money and be successful. But just having them concentrated in one area is kind of my problem. So if that's makes sense to you, to maybe pick the 2 that make, you know your business better than I
I would
do.
say the 2 next to each other.
Okay.
So we're taking those basically down to the frame. It's just the roof and the studs left. So there's going to be brand new houses.
Okay.
I'm actually living in the one across the street.
Okay.
I'm building a house over on 44th between Western and Francis.
Okay.
Kawasushinico.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be done until the end of the year. So I'm living in that house currently while I build a house to live in.
Okay.
So, I mean, I would prefer the 2, 2908 and 2904.
Okay. Board members, questions or comments of the applicant? And then I think we've got someone else that was wanting to speak on this.
I'm good with that, with the typical restrictions, no off-street parking, stuff like that. 4-car max.
Okay.
And we'll do it specific for each one, but.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I would just add that, you know, his application says that there's parking in the driveway, but to be clear, you're talking about prohibiting street parking.
Right.
Not just saying in the ad that there is driveway parking, but actually prohibiting street parking.
I don't know about limiting this public street. I mean, what if they had guests that come in? How are you going to police that? I don't know how realistic
We
that
can't.
is.
I mean, honestly, we can't.
Yeah. Hotly contested issue, not particularly in this neighborhood, but in the historic neighborhoods. Parking is a hotly contested issue. So we'll raise that in just a second after we hear from the person that was wanting to speak, and then we'll bring you back up here.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but I saw a hand waving, so if you'd like to say a few comments, yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Mathis. I am the broker owner of Milk and Honey Realty at 624 North Broad, and I'm speaking on behalf of my client, James Clondry, behind me there. I am actually a property manager for short-term rentals throughout Oklahoma City, Edmond, and Guthrie. I've been doing this for about 3 years. I want to introduce myself to the panel because I wanted to express that we are a local company. We have a lot of experience in the growth of short-term rentals through COVID, and I believe that it doesn't create a hardship for those surrounding homeowners. The reason why is, one, because we are not a long-term rental, we are able to go in and we're assessing properties constantly. So we're able to check the status of a property, whereas if it was a long-term rental, there's issues with tenants versus homeowners. I think we can all search our memories in the past and think of a tenant that maybe was not agreeable but locked into a 12-month lease. In these situations, we do have security camera on the front, just the front, so we can see who's checking in. We can check the activity. On all of his applications for these properties, there's no outside pool or hot tub on any of these, nor will there be, so there won't be any congregating outside. Also, we do not allow off-street parking, so that will not be advertised. It will be, we can check from the cameras if that is a violation. We don't allow check-ins after 9 p.m., so they have to check in before 9 p.m. Also, we have quiet hours that we strictly enforce. And being local versus being a national brand, and you do see, I understand that there are a lot of complaints for short-term rentals. There are a lot of national companies that don't have boots on the ground here. We are local. We have 5 members of my staff that are dedicated to managing these properties, and we are available 24 hours a day. Prior to that, I will go and I will put a letter on everybody's door that is surrounding the property. Also, I will try to arrange a call or a Zoom call with them to establish a relationship to the neighboring homes. That way, they can call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with any concern. So, you don't really have that with a long-term management. There's not really, when you're a neighbor of long-term management, there's not somebody you can call to complain if your neighbor's getting too loud, rowdy, have dogs, that sort of thing. For these properties specifically, I would think it would be a benefit that they can call me at any time with any complaints or concerns, and we do understand and appreciate that relationship. Obviously, we want to keep them happy, because if they are not, they can affect the profitability for my clients. Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't think so. Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Condry, just to deal with the parking issue, if you wanted to come back up really quickly. It sounded like it's possible to have off-street parking only. I would say in the last kind of 6 meetings, I think every one of them we've required off-street parking only, just to alleviate that concern. With the acknowledgement that Mr. Privet had, that you raised as well, the enforcement is always an issue with that. But the idea being, if it's a condition of the special exception, that it be advertised as off-street parking only,
Sure.
that it'll be a deterrent for people who would want to park on the street or something like that. So.
Yeah, I would certainly want to, follow whatever we agree to. I don't manage these things, so, defer to Sarah on that.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like you've got a responsible manager that's going to take care of it. And, obviously, from the homeowner's perspective, there are benefits to short-term versus renting. And there are certainly studies from around the world, I don't know about in Oklahoma City, but around the world, where home sharing actually increases the prices of the homes in the neighborhood. Rather than what a lot of neighbors think it's going to decrease the value, oftentimes it has the opposite effect, which has a problem for folks that are trying to keep their taxes low, and it raises a whole can of worms. But anyway, all of that said, I think the only condition that I think we would need would be off-street parking only board members, and then the next question would be a period of time, and I would think for these 2 to 3 years, potentially. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, but.
Yeah, and did we decide on, you said 208 and 213?
204 preferably.
Oh, 204, okay. Yeah, I could get on board with 2 years on those 2 properties.
You say 2 years? Okay. Board members, any? Okay.
Yeah, 5, 10, whatever.
20 years, and then let Laura argue that in court?
I prefer they replace every long-term rental in my neighborhood with a short-term. They're horrible.
Okay, and then you'll have the permitting process, which will be every year, and then special exception here, it sounds like the board's thinking 2 years. And then you come back in 2 years and renew that, and at that point, you might get a longer period of time, so.
Great, thanks, guys.
Okay. Is there anyone else who was hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, hearing none. Board members, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move approval of case number 14879, and are we just doing this one, or is he coming back?
Just this one, yeah, independently. And then,
With the condition that it be advertised as off-street parking only, for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions of special exception.
and you may have said for 2 years, but I don't.
Oh, for 2 years,
Okay.
yes.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case number 14879 for the reason it meets statutory condition for a special exception for a period of 2 years on the condition that it be advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please.
I'll vote yes.
Okay.
Nothing popped up. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Sorry.
And it's approved.
Item 16 is case 14880, application by the same applicant for home sharing at 1123 Northwest 46th Street.
And for this one, I think just in the sake of saving time, I think we've all read the application, and you can incorporate your comments from the prior application, and we can incorporate our comments from the prior application, and then let us know if there's anything different about this property.
There's really not. I mean, just the part of town it's in, but Northwest Oklahoma City, it's non-historical. It is an up-and-coming neighborhood, where Somerset, is just a little bit different demographic, but this will be more of a luxury rental. It's going to be a higher price point. Parking situation will be the same. There will be, you could fit 4 cars there easily, which should service the capacity.
Yeah, this seems similar, as 3-bed, 1-bath, like the last one. Off-street parking's available, different part of town, that doesn't look like it's too concentrated. Board members, any questions or comments of the applicant? Okay. Anyone hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Hearing none, I think we can take a motion and presumably incorporate the same conditions.
I motion that we approve case number 14880 with the same conditions as the previous one.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14880 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception. Same conditions as a prior application for the same period of time. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Item 17, case 14881, application by the same applicant for home sharing at 2913 Somerset Place.
And then I think this is, board members, the application we discussed denying. Is there any question or comment? Okay, I think we can take a motion.
I move that we deny application number 14881
I second.
The reason that it does not meet
for
the.
the reason that it does not meet the statutory conditions for a special exception.
Okay.
And I second.
Okay, we've got a motion to deny the application 14881 for the reason it does not meet the conditions for a special exception. Cast your votes, please.
Oh, excuse me, I hit the wrong thing.
Were you voting
I
in
know,
favor?
I hit the wrong thing, I'm so sorry.
How do we need to change that to make sure your job's easier? Could you do it by voice?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just voting by voice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I approve. I am so sorry.
Good?
To clarify that you're voting in favor of the motion.
Yes, I am
Yeah,
voting in favor of. Thank
Okay.
you.
And the motion to deny has been approved.
Item 18, case 14882, special exception of the same applicant for home sharing at 2904 Somerset Place.
And this is the one that's across the street, right?
This is the next door,
Okay.
This one's
right?
adjacent.
Yep. Does he need to introduce himself every time, do you think? Okay. Same applicant, I think we've discussed this. Any questions or comments from the board? Anyone in the public hoping to speak on this, other than the applicant? Do you have any other comments on
I
this?
do not.
Okay. Same conditions, board? I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll move approval of special exception case number 14882 for the reasons that it meets the requirements for a special exception for a period of 2 years with off-street parking only.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve special exception in case 14882 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years, off-street parking. It'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Item 19, 14883, application for special exception of the same applicant for home sharing at 1117 Northwest 48th Street.
Okay. This one just seems similar to the 46th Street one.
Very similar.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any additional comments on this one? Okay.
Don't. Same parking situation.
Okay. Any members of the public hoping to speak on this application? Okay, board members, I think we can take a motion.
I'll move approval of case number 14883 for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception.
Second.
With the same conditions as the prior application of, or two before, no, off-street parking only and for 2 years.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14883 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years. Only condition will be advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved. And I think you had another one later on in the agenda, so I think to save time, I will move that one to right now.
Appreciate it.
And you can present just a quick summary of that one. Or after, he's got to announce it, I guess.
Okay, this is item 24, case 14900, application for special exception of the same applicant for home sharing at 3404 Northwestern Avenue.
Okay, and same applicant. This one's on Western, it seems. Let's see, yeah.
There will be no option to park on Western.
Yeah, one of the notes, handwritten, ample off-street parking seems accurate. And it seems a few blocks away from the other ones, 46 and 48. This is 33rd. 4-bedroom, 3-bath. And this looks like a little bit bigger project.
Yeah, this one has already been remodeled. I bought this from a friend who bought the house about 3 years ago, already fully remodeled. So this will be more of a luxury rental. There's not much to do to this one. It's, you know, located between Western Avenue and Paseo. Like a pretty vibrant two entertainment districts. This will probably be more, you know, people that are coming to Oklahoma City for entertainment purposes. Hopefully.
Yeah, this one's in a slightly more controversial, but just given
Paseo area, right?
Yeah, close to it, and given the size and the location, but I don't think that I would oppose the application. And I think 2 years is a short enough amount of time. I think I'm okay with that as well. So, board members, any questions or comments?
There's apartments next to it as well.
Okay.
I mean, the building to the north is a multifamily. It's been there for years.
What about to the south?
4 different units. There's an empty lot to the south.
Okay.
Or it's a weird alleyway. I'm sorry, not to the south. I was looking to the east. to
Those are
this-
apartments to the east, or is it like a quadplex or something?
Well, to the east, there's an empty lot. That's a garage back behind.
Okay.
Then to the south, there's a residence there, and I mean, I know the family that lives there just because I frequented this house when my friend lived there, so I've been around it. They're not opposed to an Airbnb, and then there's a rental that going down to the south, so south to the east, between Western and Ollie, those are all rentals, to my knowledge.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I can support it, and we'll know within 2 years if something doesn't work out with this. But board members, any comments? Okay. Is anyone other than the applicant open to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, I think we could take a motion.
I motion that we approve case number 14900 for a period of 2 years with the conditions of the previous ones as well.
I'll second it.
Okay, I got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14900 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years, and it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 20, case 14889, special exception of Brittany Hunt Jassy for home sharing at 1625 North Kentucky Avenue.
Hi there. Can you hear me clearly enough with the mask, or should I?
I think I can, yeah.
Okay.
I always
My name
like
is-
for you to wear a mask if you want to wear a mask, so yeah.
Sure. My name is Brittany Hunt Jassy. I live at 5805 North Billen Avenue here in Oklahoma City, and I'm here on an application for a home sharing license. My second on this property, I was previously here in January and was granted a 5-year exception for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house at the corner of 16th, Northwest 16th and Kentucky. This it was a garage apartment, extremely run down when we purchased the property. I believe it was turned into an apartment somewhere in the middle of the last century. It was originally a carriage house. We have fully remodeled this home, not yet furnished it, but this property at 1625 has been fully remodeled to be completely wheelchair accessible. That's a gap in the short-term rental market that we're trying to fill. Currently, the 3-bedroom, 2-bath house has been on Airbnb since February. There were several conditions that self-imposed that were part of our license, and I think part of why we were approved for 5 years. This includes a screening process where the primary guest must be at least 25. We require a copy of a photo ID. I have noise monitoring as part of a security system. Let's see, was there anything? No pets allowed except for service animals, and Airbnb requires us to accept emotional support animals as well. The intention with this property is to offer it alone and also as part of a dual rental with up to 10 guests, no more. This driveway, as you see it in this photo, was large enough to hold 4 large vehicles. We have expanded it, and I apologize, I didn't provide a digital copy of a photo, but I do have a photo. The current driveway, which we permitted as part of the expansion, is 36 and a half feet by 20 feet. Our intention is to line it diagonally to have 4 regular size parking spots and 1 accessible spot, so a larger spot for a vehicle that can transport a wheelchair. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I think those are the highlights I wanted to hit. It is my hope to obtain a 5-year license so that it links up with the license or the exception that we already have. We have not had any complaints from neighbors. All parking with the remodel, we have had to have some people park on the street through the remodel. We have never had more than 3 cars for a stay. I've got 33 stays under my belt so far. So it's my belief that with a total of 5 spots, there won't be any need for street parking at all. So, happy to answer any questions.
I can't believe the prior one was January 7th, because I remember it. And I remember us essentially looking at this one on the merits because we knew we were going to approve both.
Sure.
And determining that we were still okay with approving both at that time, knowing that we'd see this application today once you finish the remodeling. So
Sure.
I don't know that my opinion on it has changed. I think I could still support it. I think aligning it with the other property and being 5 years makes sense as well. But just my thoughts. Any other questions or comments from the board members?
I agree, and I remember this as well, but my only comment is that, I mean, even looking at our home sharing licensing location, this area is already getting pretty concentrated, so just moving forward, I wouldn't be on board with, months later approving an application that maybe we anticipated approving prior, because the concentration in the city area to area changes constantly. So for this particular application, I would be okay with supporting it, but I just want to get that out there.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense to me. Any other questions or comments? Anyone in the public hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Hearing none. Board members, I think we could take a motion.
4 years and 7 months?
That's what I was thinking. 4.5 years if you want to line them up.
Make it easy for me, that's great.
And this one I would want as well, off-site parking, yeah, but I don't think that's an issue, so.
I don't think we did this on the prior applications, but typically when they are self-imposed conditions on the application, we incorporate those into the license, and so I would propose that we do the same here.
I'll make a
Is that,
motion.
well, before, is that going to be a problem for you? I mean, I doubt it, but,
To continue the conditions? No,
okay,
not at all.
yeah.
And even 5 years, I guess. I was kind of kidding on the force. It would make it in line with the other one. Motion to approve special exception for case number 14889 for a period of 5 years, incorporating the applicant's own restrictions and also no off-street parking.
I hate to do this, but I just noticed, I think in your oral presentation, you had 10 guests, and then the application it says 12.
So I actually just have decided I don't want more than 10 people
Okay.
total in the property. We leave it at 6 for the main house, and really have not even, no one's even asked for an exception for that. And frankly, I think it will probably just be 2 in the little house. I want to reserve the right to put a pull-out couch in, so 10
Would
is great.
Would 6 be all right for that one too? Or? I don't think we need 10 or 12.
I'm just trying to clarify, we said we were going to incorporate the self-imposed
right.
restrictions, and if there's a discrepancy, I just wanted to clarify it.
Sure.
So if the board's comfortable with 12 or 10, just wanted that to be clear for the record. So, Mr. Privet, since you made the motion, what do you think?
I don't think you're going to get that many people in there anyway, so I think we're fine.
Do it with 10? It's just how they advertise it. It'll be advertised as a
Yeah.
maximum of 10.
Yeah. How many bedrooms?
There are 3 bedrooms in the main house. This at 1625 is a studio, so there's, the only enclosed space is the bathroom.
Okay, so is it 10, 12, like both properties? Is
So
that what
10
we're talking about?
Yes, so originally 12 was the max I was anticipating for both properties. I wasn't entirely sure what this remodel would
Okay.
allow for.
So it'd be 10, so 5 basically for this application.
It's how she advertises them jointly is what I'm thinking of. And
Okay,
frankly,
yeah.
I don't have a problem with 12. I just wanted some clarity.
But go with 10, you know?
Okay.
10's okay with you, right?
That's fine by
Okay.
me.
I'll second with
I
that
assume
condition.
that doesn't change your
Doesn't
second?
change
Okay.
my second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14889 for the reason it meets the statutory condition for a special exception for a period of 5 years, including the self-imposed conditions of the application, and that the joint booking will be advertised as a maximum of 10 guests. once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 21, case 14896, special exception of Arlen Eastwood to allow home sharing at 6124 Johnny Terrace.
Hello there, board members. Arlen Eastwood, I'm the owner of 6124 Johnny Terrace. I currently live there, but I also work at Boeing and have a home in Wichita, and my family lives in Wichita. So I commute home on the weekends, and I would like to ask for this special exception for lodging accommodations at this house during the weekends when I'm not here, and possibly other days that I could rent this out to short-term people. So, any questions for me? I heard your...
Like it shares a driveway with four
Yeah,
other
there-
properties?
Yes, it's a real short cul-de-sac, and there's four homes that share that driveway. So I'm thinking that people wouldn't park out into that. That's like a turnaround. It's kind of a tight area, to be honest with you, but like 2 cars parking in up against the garage is pretty easy.
Will they be able to use the garage?
No, I'm thinking I would close that off and use that for storage and,
Okay.
yeah. Unless that doesn't work out, but. I
It's
think-
listed
yeah.
in the application, so we'll just,
So, yeah, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Okay. Board members, any other questions or comments? Look like you're on a home sharing desert in this area, so there's not a lot around you, which tips in your favor.
The HOA president said there was one other. I don't know if you can see that on your map
Okay.
or.
Yeah, there was kind of one, and then not a lot else in the area, so. Was anyone in the public hoping to speak on this application? Hearing none. Board members, questions, comments, or a motion? And I think we also need to talk about how long.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with 2 or 3 years.
Did you say 3?
2 or 3 years, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I may have missed this in the conversation before, but were you okay with advertising as no on-street parking? I think the one response that we did get from a neighbor in support of the application was pretty particular about parking, so.
Yeah, was that from Teresa or?
Yes.
Yeah, she was, I've talked to her quite a bit, but, and she said no?
No,
Yeah.
she's in support of the application. I'm
Yeah.
just saying she was very particular about the parking, so I would
Yeah.
want to incorporate the no off-street parking.
I agree. I mean, it's a ways to the street and it would, so I would agree with that.
Okay, so we'll just, again, enforcement is an issue, but it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Okay. Yeah, this is a very strong support letter that she received.
Yeah,
So
she's quite the gal.
usually we see strongly worded opposition
Yeah,
letters. So.
I wouldn't want to get her on my bad side, to be honest with you.
With that, I think we can take a motion.
I'll move approval of case number 14896 with the condition that the property be advertised as no street parking and include the self-imposed rules on the applicant's application for a period of 2 years.
A second.
Motion and second to approve the special exception in case 14896 for a period of 2 years for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception, including the self-imposed conditions of the application, and that it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. The motion was for 2. Yep.
I'm sorry? It's green on my screen. Yes, I move approval. Or I vote yes. It's green on my screen, so I don't know what's going on.
And it's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 22, case 14898, special exception of Bow Rentals to allow home sharing at 12640 Southeast 44th Street.
Cooper Hahn, 522 Colcord Drive. As the application states, we're seeking a special exception to allow home sharing at 12640 Southeast 44th Street. If you look at the pictures, large house, even larger driveway, 4-car garage. Guests will have access to that. Parking is not an issue really at all. If you look at the aerial also as well, it kind of shows just how long that driveway is to the main house. The only kind of unique thing about this is this garage you see off to the left in this aerial actually has a 1-bedroom apartment with a bathroom that can accommodate two additional guests.
So that's included in this home sharing advertisement?
Correct.
Okay.
Optional. If someone needs it, my client can go and lock it.
Okay.
They don't need it for the parking. I mean, it's basically kind of a barn, but they've built it up nice. And they do have an apartment in there.
Okay. I think the obvious question is no opposition, none? I mean,
none to my knowledge.
No objections, especially after the last meeting?
Well,
Interesting.
I think this one's a little more conducive for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Far away from anybody else. So,
Maybe Mr. Box can lodge an objection, just something to give us something.
No, I don't think Mr. Box would like to speak on this item.
Yeah, no, this one made sense to me, much less controversial than the last application that we're familiar with. And one thing that city staff raised that you might be able to address is if it has if it's advertised as having over 4 rooms, you'd probably have to comply with commercial codes as well. And so, which would be, I would think, too burdensome to probably make this project work. So I don't think that defeats the application. I think it just might need to be advertised as 4 rooms instead of anything in addition to 4, and then folks can look at the photos and listing and see if they want to rent the place for their desired use, if that makes sense. So that, I mean, and for the purposes of the board, I'll say one of the things that we have to meet, or one of the things that you'll have to meet, and I think we have to meet, is that you have to affirm that you meet all the applicable code provisions. And that would be one that if it's advertised as 5 rooms, I think you'd have to meet commercial code requirements. Is that a halfway?
Yeah, can we get confirmation on that? I'm unaware of that.
So as part of the licensing process, the applicant is required to sign an affidavit that they comply with all applicable fire codes, building codes, that there's a carbon monoxide detector on site, and those kinds of things. So I think the board, if they wanted to in their order, could incorporate that the applicant is required to meet the applicable codes for the number of rooms being rented.
I mean, of course, upon applying for the license, I mean, of course, we're going to sign that same affidavit. I'm asking, is this commercial code requirement, where is that found? Or is that just a policy of the Board of Adjustment?
The commercial building code has been adopted by the city of Oklahoma City and is in force for all buildings within the city. The issue is that if you are using it for more than 4 bedrooms, then the commercial building code is triggered.
Okay.
So that's where plan review would be involved with the licensing process.
I mean,
And so if it's, at least for our purposes, advertised as 4 bedrooms, then I think we would approve 4 bedrooms and presumably wouldn't trigger that process. That's what I'm saying. So So that would be the condition.
You're gonna go online and look at it.
Let's just defer this 2 weeks. Defer it 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's probably too big of a project to have any uncertainties. And so that makes sense. And I'd want to also, I think, have the confidence of you all and your client that my idea would actually work for your purposes, and you wouldn't run into issues with the city later. But I suspect that if you advertise it as 4 rooms and then shown whatever pictures you wanted to show, you would comply with all the applicable requirements. But if you advertise it as 5, 6, 7, however many rooms, you might trigger that commercial stuff.
Let's do this. Why don't let Cooper text him, put this after 27 if you don't mind, since we're both still going to be here, and then we'll have it answered by the conclusion of that.
Okay.
If that's acceptable.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll move this to item 27. Or after item 27.
Next item is 23, case 14899, special exception Kevin Snow to allow lodging accommodations home sharing at 3304 Rock Creek Road.
Nope. My name's Kevin Snow. I live at 3308 West Rock Creek Road. I own the house next door. And we purchased this property for the intention of hosting an Airbnb. And it is legally a 4-bedroom home with a bonus room. Any questions? We do have ample parking. When we bought the house, it did have the circle drive already in place. So you can easily park 6 to 7 vehicles, so there's no need for on-street parking.
Yeah, I think with this one, there wasn't any, like a narrative or anything that gave us some details, and so we weren't sure what exactly this application entailed. So I think you're telling us 4 rooms and then a bonus room, off-street parking. How many guests are you going to advertise this as?
We advertise 16. That's the max Airbnb will allow us to advertise. We have sleeping quarters for 16 people.
How many bathrooms are in it?
I'm sorry?
How many bathrooms are in it for 16 people?
4.
I can't understand you.
The bathrooms?
How many? Oh, there's 3 bathrooms.
Oh, wow.
I think, and this might not be insurmountable, but my concern was, given the size of this project and the lack of specificity in the application, I don't know that neighbors got adequate notice of what was going to be presented to us. And so the neighbors received notice that there was going to be a special exception, but would they get the details of the application?
I think that it would be for home sharing, that would be included in the notice.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially what I'm saying is the neighbors know that there's special exception applications, but they might not know that it's for 16 people and 4 to 5 rooms, and that might change whether they oppose the application or not. So that's my only concern. I don't know if that's insurmountable, but I might want this to be renoticed. The board might be comfortable with it as is, but
I'm more concerned with the 16 people in the pool and the 4 or 5 bedrooms.
Okay.
I think.
And also the parking may present a problem, even though it's a round circular parking. If each one of those 16 guests came in a separate car, then you couldn't accommodate that.
Sometimes it's just max up to that, but so far we haven't had that issue. There have only been a maximum of 5 cars so far that have come to the property.
So what is the total number of cars that driveway can hold?
The driveway can probably hold a total of 7, but we also have parking in the backyard because for that age of house in Quail Creek, it has a rear load garage. So I could actually fit another 4 cars in the backyard if we needed to open the gate for that purpose.
Are you already using this for home sharing?
We started like a couple of weeks ago before in the process of in this application.
it happens. But yeah, it sounds like it's getting cleaned up here
Yeah.
today, so.
Everything kind of mashed together and.
So that's my only concern is I prefer that it be renoticed with more details on the proposed use. Again, the board might be comfortable with it as is, but I personally think I'd want it renoticed. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Unless we just impose a lot of restrictions, I'm probably not on board.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, my biggest concern is the number of guests that you're allowing. 16, that's quite a bit for a neighborhood.
Okay.
A lot of traffic.
This may be a question for council, but does this application not trigger the same issues as the prior?
It would, with the number of, if it's more than 4 bedrooms
Right.
being offered for rent.
Okay.
He said 4
Yeah.
with a
One's a
bonus
bonus
room.
Bonus room,
And,
yeah.
and I don't know how
How
that
is that
would be.
interpreted?
I don't think it'd be, I think we would only approve 4. It'd be,
Yeah.
the condition would be we'd approve it as having a maximum of 4. And I don't think, it sounds like you don't have a problem with that. And
But
then,
can you accommodate 16 people without the bonus room?
No.
Right, okay.
well, but it's advertised as 4, and then, at least as currently drafted, up to 16. And so people can determine on their own whether they still want to rent that property or not, based on the advertisement. And then he complies with it being under 5, but it's 16 people, and, you know, the renter can determine whether they want to rent it. To me, it sounds like this is something that we would want to continue for the next meeting. I think it's in 2 weeks, and we don't skip like we have in the past couple meetings, but a continuance for 2 weeks where this gets revised a little bit and resubmitted and then renoticed, and then can we do all that?
It'll
within
have to be more than 2 weeks.
Isn't it 10 days?
For a renotice.
I thought it was 10 days for notice, but yeah. Okay. Okay. But even then, if someone did have an issue with it, they could look and see if the revised application had more details in it. And so that would make me more comfortable personally, just to check all the boxes that all the neighbors were aware of exactly what's going on. And you could potentially revise it to address some of the concerns that the board's raised today. So, you know, you could revise it and say, you're going to advertise it as off-street parking only because you have adequate parking. I think that would alleviate some concerns, and it would be clear in the record that that's what you wanted to do. I'm not suggesting that you limit the number of people, but sounds like some of the board members are concerned with the number of people, so you can think about whether you want to revise that or bring 16 back, I don't know. But just revise it with some more detail and then come back in 2 weeks. Cindy, is that enough time to renotice? After you receive the revised application here in probably 2-3 days?
I believe it goes to the September meeting.
Notices go out tomorrow.
I will be out of town the first 2 weeks of September for a funeral for out of state.
Okay.
So
it would be the last meeting of September? 16th. Yeah, we have a meeting on the 16th, September 16th.
that would be fine.
Okay. So I guess given the 16th, it sounds like you've got a little bit of time to revise, but take some time to revise the application and work with city staff on resubmitting that. And then we'll have a complete application that's been noticed. That'll alleviate my concerns. You can try to alleviate the other concerns you've heard today, and we can get on down the road in September.
Okay, so it's mostly just the number of guests and the off-street parking?
And the parking, and then clarity on the number of rooms.
And clarity on number of rooms,
I
okay.
think that's the only thing I've heard. Anything else from the board or city staff? Okay. Given that, I think we can take a motion to continue this application to September 16th meeting.
I'd like to motion that we continue case number 14899 until September the 16th.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to continue case 14899 to September 16th. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Okay, thank you.
Item 25, special exception of Luke Richardson to allow home sharing at 1120 Northwest 43rd Street.
Luke Richardson, 445 Goldfields Trail in Edmond, seeking a home sharing exemption for 1120 Northwest 43rd. It's a one-bedroom, one-bath duplex, one bedroom on each side, and up to 4 guests. There'd be no on-street parking. There's a driveway with a parking pad in the back that has room for 2 cars. And I own the house directly across the street, next door. Those are long-term rentals. I have guests in there for almost 2 years, or tenants for almost 2 years. The duplex next door to this one will be rented long-term as well. So, I mean, I'll have it completely insulated, this unit, and
So the other side of the duplex is long-term?
it will be. It's under renovation right now.
Okay.
And so, once that's done here, 6 to 8 weeks, that one I'll lease out long-term.
Okay.
They'll know going in that there's going to be an Airbnb next door.
Okay. Yeah, getting pretty saturated over on
Yeah.
Western.
That's, yeah, well, and the guy before me, and he's got the 2 there. And then the one he got approved on Western, I was speaking with you all in March or April, and my property backs up to his, and I have an Airbnb right there. Since then, I've got a 4.95 rating and 100% occupancy over 4 months, so doing well.
Humble brag.
Yeah, it's doing good, so I'm back again.
Okay. I think the fact that you live across the street helps me feel more comfortable.
I don't live across the street.
Oh.
I own the house, and then across
Okay.
the street and next door, and
Do
those
you
are
manage?
long-term.
Do you manage? all
Yeah,
the
I
property?
personally manage my properties.
And then how far away are you?
I'm in Edmond.
Okay. So you own this little quarter of homes.
Yeah,
and
right there.
Insulate the Airbnb with some long-term properties?
Yep.
Okay. Given that the other side of this duplex is long-term and the other side of the street is long-term, I think we're going to start watching Western a lot more closely, but I don't know that I would choose this one to take a stand. So I think I could support this. Maybe we do a little bit shorter amount of time, maybe 2 years or something, but with off-street parking only. Any other questions or comments, board? Okay. Is anyone hoping to speak on the application other than the applicant, who unfortunately had to sit through all the other applications through no fault of his own?
Yep.
Hearing no other comment, I think we can take a motion.
I move that we approve case number 14903 for 2 years off-street parking based on the conditions that it meets the requirements of a variance. Excuse me, special exception.
Okay, and then were you going to incorporate the conditions in the application?
And the conditions that are
Okay.
in the application as well.
And you may have said that, and I might have just not heard. But,
I did not.
Any second? Okay. We've got a second and a third to approve the special exception in case 14903 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years, including the self-imposed conditions in the application, and there'll be off-street parking only, or advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Probably.
Did that one man leave?
Yeah, I don't see the applicant we were looking for.
Yeah, he left.
That takes us back to number 10, 14902, request for variance to aisle standards at 436 Northwest 30th Street.
I don't see him, JJ.
He
I
left.
think he stepped out. Is that him?
No.
Okay.
I think he had a representative with him.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Cool.
Did you want to just push the application until your representative comes back, or? Okay, then we'll push that.
That takes us back to 11,
Oh,
1494.
I'm sorry.
904.
Let me stop you really quickly. Okay. We'll still wait for his representative, yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. That just takes us back to David's 14904 on Classen Drive.
So we can do some bike racks. I still think sorry, Mr. Privet laughed and made me chuckle. I still think we need a variance just to be safe so that when we get to permitting that we don't end up back here. But we will max out the bike racks. I'm not sure what that leaves us in terms of the number that we need for the variance, but I do still think we need a variance.
At least according to me, it was only one spot. So you're right that even with that, you would still need a variance, but it would only be one spot. And I think just to give you a buffer, maybe we could grant 2 spots.
Perfect.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. Any motions?
I'll move approval of case number 14904 for a variance of 2 spaces instead of 7, for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions for the requested variance.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 14904 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a variance of 2 spaces. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
On item 22, we're happy to require it to be advertised as a 4-bedroom.
Do you need to reintroduce it just for the record?
Okay, item 22, 14898, special exception of Bow Rentals for home sharing at 12640 Southeast 44th Street.
Okay, and this, they've agreed that it'll be advertised as 4 rooms. Does that satisfy, at least for our purposes?
Right, and they'll still have to sign the affidavit that they're complying with applicable building codes.
And just a quick question, because that triggers based on a single structure, can it be 4 bedrooms for the main house and still the separate bedroom? So a total of 5, but 2 separate structures.
You know, that's a question I would have to ask plan review, what triggers.
I mean,
right.
Is the rule, I don't know, I mean, do you not know, is the rule basically triggered by a single structure advertised over 4 bedrooms?
I bet it's a single structure.
I would believe so, but
Can't
I'm not
imagine
100%.
it's 2 separate structures.
Can we, based on the assumption, we'll advertise the main house as 4 bedrooms?
Yeah, and yeah, that makes sense. And then you can still advertise it as 4 bedrooms and then an extra in a separate place.
Call it a bonus room.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, bonus house. Yeah. Board members, any questions or comments or a time limitation that we want to discuss? I mean, given this area, I think a longer period of time, I wouldn't be totally against. So 4 or 5 years.
10.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval for a period of 5 years, requirement that it be advertised as 4-bed in the main house.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14898.
Period of 5 years.
8 for, yeah, a period of 5 years. On the condition it will be advertised in the main house, only sleeping or having 5 rooms. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, he's back. Okay, back to number 10, 14902, request for variance to aisle standards at 436 Northwest 30th Street.
John Robinson, architect, here to talk about Mr. Khan's building that he's doing. And we've gotten a report from the city that we took to be a decision. And we're now, I've been running up the steps. So we're trying to get what he needs, which is a 12-foot driveway.
Yeah,
And-
let me,
and
I'll stop you there.
That'll be a deal killer if we don't.
I'll stop you there because I think I can save it.
What did I say?
I'll stop you there because I think one issue we need to address, and I don't know if it's been conveyed to you or not, but it's looking like we would need to continue this and get a recommendation from Historic Preservation for approval of this variance before we can even hear the variance.
Yeah.
And so when's the next time that we can do that?
I believe that the next HP Commission meeting, I think, is September 1st. I would think that we could hopefully make the deadline for that meeting. Katie, is that accurate?
We can certainly put them on for the September 1st agenda.
Okay. And Mr. Khan, looks like you had some comments.
Yeah, Mumtaz Khan,
Okay.
171 Wall Green Avenue, Edmond, Oklahoma. I
Okay.
just want to know if you can do like conditionally approval or whatever is after their decision, when their decision is going to be acceptable.
I wish we could. The problem is I don't think we have authority to approve anything right now until we get a recommendation
Okay.
from HP. I wish there's something we could do because it sounds like you need something to advance this project.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So I think then we could make the September 2nd Board of Adjustment meeting then, if it's on the 1st for the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, so September 2nd, HP would hear it on the 1st, we'd hear it on the 2nd.
Okay.
But unfortunately, and given the rules of the procedure that we have to follow, we have been told that we can't even hear the case yet until we get a recommendation from HP. So, and I assume it's going to go well at HP, and it sounds like it's just kind of a procedural
Right.
oversight, but that's where we are. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll see you September 2nd. Board members, do we have a motion? Continue.
Move we continue September 2nd.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to continue case 14902 to our September 2nd, 2021 meeting. And it's continued.
Okay, that takes us to item 27, 14859, request of Vital Outdoor for appeal of administrative decision regarding the denial of a sign permit at 16901 North Portland Avenue.
David Box, 522 Colcord. If I may, just because of the unique nature of this, if we could wait for Mr. Privet to be back, I think that would be beneficial for frankly everybody.
Yep, I thought you might say that. Yeah.
Perhaps you take a recess for.
Don't you have one other issue that we put after?
No, we dealt with that. That was 22.
Okay, so we did with that first. Is there anything after those?
Yeah. Other business is executive session.
Oh, that one's not. It's been stricken.
Okay. There's comments from citizens, and I'm still debating on if I have any, so.
Okay. Well, we'll give you some time to draft your comments, and we'll take a brief recess. We'll say 5 minutes. All right, board members, are you ready? Okay, we're back for the August 5th meeting after a short recess. Mr. Box, you want to, have you called the case yet, JJ? I think you have. Okay, so Mr. Box.
Here on behalf of the appellant in this matter, and we were not aware of the item A until last Friday, so we're going to handle them obviously separately. I'm going to have Mr. Hahn come and argue portion A, and then once we dispose of that, I will be presenting materials and facts as it relates to item B on the agenda.
Okay. Mr. Hahn?
Well, procedurally, I would say they're kind of challenging our timeliness, so I would think it would make sense as if it were their motion. They kind of present their case and I respond, but I'd be happy to lay it out.
Have you received a copy of the memo that the city?
I believe, yeah, one was hand-delivered
Okay.
Tuesday afternoon. I didn't have time to submit anything to the board, given it, I think it was like
Yeah,
1:30
no,
when I first saw it.
I didn't expect, I'd be surprised if there was a response filed.
Yeah,
before
I
the
didn't
meeting.
file any response. I just
Okay.
didn't have the time to do so.
And it's I think a straightforward issue, so I don't know that we need a summary from the city just yet. We might let them respond to your comments, but.
No problem. Well, I mean, this is a procedural issue, so I think it helps to kind of understand the timeline. Initially, an application was filed back in December. The applicant received direct word via email, basically saying that what's at issue here, that Section 10 of the PUD is an exhaustive list of signage allowed on the property. We got involved sometime right around the very start of March. I had a phone call with the city attorney, Ms. McDevitt. Ms. McDevitt kind of told me her opinion. I took that opinion. I went and looked at the code. My opinion obviously differed from hers, but I went and looked at the code, tried to see what remedies were available. There was nothing against us refiling within the code, so we advised our client to refile the application. The application was refiled on March 12th. From March 12th to March 25th, nothing happened on the application. The city made no action on that second application. On the 25th, I reached out to Mr. Mark Magdalena, tried to set up a phone call. We did have that phone call. He again expressed they were going to deny the second application under the exact same verbiage. I requested that in writing just so I had something to attach basically to this appeal.
One question. Hopefully not to throw you off too much. Sure. Was that application identical to the first application, or was it modified in any way?
I believe it's identical.
Okay.
To the contents thereof.
Okay.
I believe it's identical. So we filed that application March 12th. We got a formal denial through that email and through a phone call that happened that same day on March 25th. We then filed our appeal on April 22nd, and that is within 30 days as the code requires. Again, the sign code, and to my knowledge, the zoning code is all silent as it relates to refiling of a sign permit application. Chairman, you spoke previously about the purview of this board. There is no ordinance against us refiling. The idea of inventing or quasi-legislatively creating some sort of bar or ban on this ordinance or on refiling of an application without an ordinance seemed a little bit beyond the purview of this board and something that City Council had the opportunity to do. They still have the opportunity to do if they wish to in the future. But when I reviewed the code and advised my client, I advised him on what I read, which there was nothing against us refiling. So we refiled, and then we filed this instant appeal within the 30 days.
Before we hear from the city board members, any questions, Mr. Hahn? And you'll get an opportunity to respond to their comments as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have someone from the city potentially.
Or I'm prepared to speak on
okay.
the timeliness issue. And so the interpretation of our office is that, and this was attached to the memo that was sent to you all earlier this week, is that the Chapter 59, Section 4250.10, that has the specific timeline requirements for when an appellant may file an appeal, and that is within 30 days of the administrative decision. And while there is no specific requirement in that section that says you cannot file successive applications, if it were to be read that you could file successive applications, then the 30-day prohibition itself would be pointless to include. So I think we need to read the code as being operative language, and that those 30 days are the appropriate time to file an appeal, and outside of that, an appeal is barred.
Okay. One question for Mr. Boxer or Mr. Hahn. I guess by Mr. Hahn's comments, he's appealing the successive application.
Yes.
That is correct.
Technically.
Sure.
And the city's kind of saying, effectively,
Well-
you're appealing the first application because they were
Yes.
identical.
Or perhaps we're appealing not even the denial. What we're really appealing is the interpretation of the PUD. That's the essence of what this appeal is the interpretation of the PUD. Now, of course, the interpretation is what led to the denial, but the root of the issue is the interpretation of the PUD.
In that way, I think would have to agree with the city, because the interpretation of the PUD occurred in January, and so that's what's being appealed.
Well, but it's an ongoing interpretation, right? And to the point that Ms. McDevitt made, the issue is, the city council has the ability to put prohibitions on successive filings or time limits. If you lose a variance case, the ordinance specifically calls out you can't refile for 6 months. And so I think it's reasonable in the absence of a prohibition, when the ordinance has actual prohibitions on timeliness, that there is no prohibition, or it would give you some sort of guidance on you can't refile. To say you're forever barred from refiling, I don't think that's what the code says.
Yeah, I would think that, without coming to any conclusions or something, I would think that there's an argument there that you must be able to refile at some point. So if you come 10 years down the line, can they wave around a denial from 2011? I would think not. I would think that you could file a new application and make some argument for why you should be approved. So, I mean, I would think at some point you would be able to file a successive application, and the fact that the code doesn't say when you should, I don't know the impact of that on this case. I mean, clearly you couldn't file it within 30 days because that's the appeal window, right? So I think clearly you couldn't do that. But after 30 days, maybe. We'll see what the board says. And then after 30 days, if you file an identical application and that's denied, you could appeal that, I guess, which is where we are here.
Right.
So.
And I believe there's provision, and JJ, correct me, but, in some zoning cases that it has to be, they also have the ability to say you can refile if it's changed, right? And again, the absence of that, and to your point, in 10 years, surely you could refile, but then we're getting into the board is trying to legislate what the ordinance should say. And the ordinance doesn't say anything. So in the absence of a prohibition, when other portions of the code do have prohibitions, tells me that we can refile. Or it would be you can't refile because here's section whatever of the ordinance that your appeal and permit violates.
Okay. Board members, questions, comments?
I guess the way I'm reading this is, if what you said, Mr. Box, is true, that you're appealing the interpretation, right? Nothing has changed about the interpretation. Mr. Khan said it's the exact same application. Nothing changed about the application. So to say that in 10 years you couldn't refile, that makes sense to me. Why would you be able to refile if nothing has changed? It's the same ordinance, it's the same statute that we're trying to interpret, it's the exact same application.
Well, you'd be able to refile, it would just presumably be denied, because...
And what's changed when we get to the second item is the city's interpretation, because what we're going to show you is that the city has interpreted this differently, and specifically the Board of Adjustment has interpreted this differently. And as luck would have it, one Mr. Mike Voorhees was a board member in 2012 when an identical issue and with an identical PUD language came before the board on this very topic. So that's the difference.
I don't know about that. I can't speak to that. I'm just speaking to what's before me right here. And as far as the timeline goes and the way I'm reading the code section, as far as the timeliness, that's where my question is coming to. Like it's not audacious to me that you say like, okay, well, it doesn't provide for me being able to refile the same application. That makes sense. It's like if a court denies your, or rules against you, no, you can't go absent new facts or new information or change in the law.
I think that is a good argument, but I think we would need to, at least they would argue at least, that we need to root that in a rule somewhere or a code provision, and they're arguing that that doesn't exist. Like there exists in court, you've got all kinds of bars against refiling, and they're expressing in the statute. They're arguing here that it's because there's not one, that there's no prohibition against refiling for them. And anyway, I'll stop there. But do you have a comment, I think?
All I was going to say was that if there is not a prohibition after 30 days, then why is the 30-day appeal language included if successive applications are going to be considered as new start dates?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll leave that to.
You have to pay a new permit fee is the reason. The city gets to collect more money.
I think it makes sense to me that there's an appeal deadline so that we're not getting appeals for cases that are 3 years old, right? That kind of makes sense to me, why there's a limit to the appeal. But I don't know that completely answers your question, but that makes sense to me, is why there's a limit there and maybe not a rule on successive applications or a limit on them. Potentially not a limit on them. We'll see what the board decides. I tend to, I'll see what the rest of the board thinks. Board members, do we have any strong views on the timeliness issue? I mean, I think the city's interpretation is consistent with probably the intent, but sort of as a matter of technicality, I think I would have to agree with the appellant. And I think if we had to argue this in district court, I'd be a little afraid that a district judge would also agree with them. And so for that reason, I think probably the prudent thing to do would be to go ahead and hear the appeal and decide the appeal on the merits. But if the board thinks that it's untimely, it can certainly determine that it's untimely. But those are kind of my thoughts on it. I think practically the city's position makes more sense, but technically I would think that the appellates are probably right on this one. Any comments, questions?
I got hung up on jurisdiction. I think the appeal was filed too late. I don't think you get new statutes and limitations by repeated filings. And I understand what you're saying.
Right.
It's not prohibited in the ordinance, but.
Yeah, there's just nothing in the ordinance, and I mean, there are other places in the ordinance that do specifically prohibit refiling. So the city council certainly was within their ability to do so here, and they chose not to. And so in the absence of a provision prohibiting refiling, it tells me that you have to be able to refile. Or they would say, no.
Well, and you can refile a denial of an application, so for a variance or something, after 180 days. So clearly there's not a complete bar to successive applications for anything, I think, that we hear, right? If we deny one of your applications for a variance, you can raise the same application in 6 months, right?
Correct.
So
you just have to wait a period of time. Yeah,
right.
Correct. To your point, you can always refile the same exact application.
Right.
There's just some provisions of the code that say it has to be a certain amount of time. Here, we don't have a requirement that it be a certain amount of time.
And I think the board's hesitation and the city's hesitation here is there probably should be a code provision there.
I'm not saying that there should.
Right, and it just seems like an oversight that you all have found. I think I'd have to agree with you on a technical basis that I think they're technically correct. But I'm only one board member, so any other thoughts on this before I think we'll take a vote on this timeliness issue and then see where we are after that. But any other comments before we take a vote? Okay. can't make a motion, so do we have a motion?
So we're voting just on timeliness.
Whether the appeal is timely, yes.
Okay. My motion is the appeal is not timely.
Okay, so I think the motion might be to dismiss the appeal as untimely. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
And I would second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to dismiss the appeal as untimely. If you'd like to dismiss the appeal, you'd vote in favor. If not, dismiss the appeal on timeliness, you would vote in favor, and then if not, you'd vote against. Once you're able to, cast your votes. We're waiting for someone.
I abstain because I'm.
Okay. And with 3 votes in favor, I think the motion passes. Okay, so the,
Could I make a strange request? In the interest of going up to district court and coming back and forth, could we put on the merits of it? And then if we win that or lose that, I just don't want to spend a bunch of my clients' money going back and forth on a procedural issue that it feels without in the absence of a provision, I don't see how the court says, yeah, you failed to meet something that isn't in existence.
the municipal counselor can correct me. I agree with you that it's a very unusual request. I think at best, it would be the board deliberating on the merits of the application, notwithstanding the fact that we've determined that it's untimely, and maybe saying, to the extent that a court determines that it is timely, this is what the board thinks about this issue. That is, I think, the best way to couch that issue, and if the municipal counselor wants to correct me or opine, I'd welcome that.
Since the board has determined it's outside the board's jurisdiction to hear the case, then I think any decision on the merits would be advisory.
Okay.
And that's fine, we don't have to. For the purpose of the record, could I have, I guess, the basis for the denial, like something that we're basing it on?
The untimeliness?
Timeliness.
Yeah, well, timeliness pursuant to what?
Yeah.
Right, well, I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, when I tell
Yeah.
the court,
Yeah.
here's,
Yeah, it sounds like, and Mr. Voorhees made the motion, so it sounds like he incorporated the city's rationale in the memo that we received. Mr. Voorhees, I don't know if you have anything to add in addition to that, but.
No,
Okay.
I struggled with this one, and I decided lack of jurisdiction, because the time to appeal, in my mind, started January 22 of this year.
Okay, and so you're incorporating the memo that the city drafted on this timeliness issue?
Yeah, I read that twice, too.
And then Monica, you seconded this, I think, and so same basis. Okay.
Yep.
Anything to add to that? Did you want to make a presentation? I mean, I don't think we need to.
we'll save it.
What's that?
Save it for when we get back.
All right.
Like Rex.
Next item on the agenda, communications and board reports. Well, additional items, have none. Communications and board reports, I see none. Citizens to be heard. Mr. Box was going to draft some defamatory remarks to the board.
So could we get the order denying? One of the issues is, you've got the appeal window that we actually have to, within 10 days, file the appeal, but then we can't actually attach the denial order because the denial order won't be issued typically until 10 days. But
Yeah.
since usually it's allowing the appeal if it's approved, could we get a denial order next week?
City staff can tell. I would think you could amend whatever you file and add that supplementary information, but city staff, can we accelerate the order denying? Okay.
Cool, okay.
Is there any problem with that from your perspective? Okay. Any other citizens to be heard? Mr. Box is not recognized, at least not today, under citizens to be heard. Any other business? Well, did you want to brief us on the status?
Sure.
this issue?
We are going to be having mediation in a case, the Oklahoma City Police Association versus the Board of Adjustment. That was originally scheduled for August 13th, but that's being moved back to September. So we'll be bringing the executive session back either later this month or first meeting in September.
Okay. So board members, if you wanted to, do you have comments on that as well?
Can I be in that since we have a joint defense agreement? We're actually on the same side there.
Can we deputize Mr. Box? Thank you. Okay, so if you are expecting to hear that content, make sure you're here for that meeting. Basically, which sounds like one of the next two meetings, we'll probably have executive session to deal with that issue. On that point, though, I don't know that anyone here was on the board at the time when this was decided, the underlying issue was decided. Mr. Voorhees was a member before, but I don't think at this time. I don't think Mr. Privet was on the board yet. But this was a hotly disputed parking garage. Parking garage that was proposed, and the board denied the application. It got appealed to the district court, and it's been litigated ever since. I would recommend, if you want to be fully up to speed on this stuff, Cindy, if you wouldn't mind sending everyone a link to that video or that meeting or something, if you could circulate that meeting to the board. Yeah, I just don't know what it is, and it might be in our materials, or you have it memorized, you've been litigating it, so. It's burned in your memory.
But I will say, I think that the way that our meeting archive system works, there's sometimes now a problem with the plugin to watch that meeting. So we might need to have like a USB or something to be distributed.
Okay. I can usually watch it only on Internet Explorer if that helps you guys. So if you have Internet Explorer, I can watch it. If Cindy sends that meeting to us, so we all know what meeting it is, and you're not able to watch it and you want to watch it, then we can talk about how she can get a copy or the city can get a copy.
If there's a link, I can watch it.
Okay. It's just, I think it'd be important to watch that, and it's probably an hour and a half meeting, or just that item is probably discussed and debated for an hour and a half. But if you want to be fully up to speed, I would watch that to be prepared for the presentation that we'll hear. Any other business?
Who was the chair at the time?
Cravens. I think it was Cravens.
Scott was?
It might have been
Janice,
but I think it was Cravens.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
2012?
No, it was 19.
It was
18?
Yeah, well, the case was filed in January of 2018.
Oh, that's right. It's continued several
And,
times.
right.
Yeah,
So,
because we didn't have.
I think it was actually heard maybe in December of 2017.
There were.
So I know Diane Lewis was on the board, Scott Cravens, Janice Powers.
Probably.
Jeff Austin, yeah.
Yeah, that was right before I got on
Okay. If you, so Cindy, if you could circulate that meeting, I'd recommend, if you guys want, it's not required, but if you want to be up to speed on what we're talking about, that gets debated. Do what?
Janice Powers might not have been on.
Okay. Any other business? All right, we are adjourned.